You get used to the stillness out here, the hum of empty roads, the low buzz of the tower light ticking above the roof like a metronome for a song no one's played in years. It's just me and the console most nights, holding hands with the static, waiting for a voice to cut through the silence. I've been running this station for 16 years. Small frequency, mostly forgotten. Just enough wattage to cover the nearby towns and keep a few loners company as they drift off to sleep. I've had my share of strange calls. Drifters, late-night conspiracy types. Even one guy who swore the moon was a lie. But last night wasn't like that. Last night wasn't anything I knew how to name. It started just after 2 a.m. I was queuing up an old jazz loop, sipping coffee that had already gone cold, when the signal broke. Not a fade, not a storm interference. Kind of glitch. Just gone. Everything, board lights, playback, even the emergency band, went dead for 6 full seconds. The kind of silence that makes your skin hum. Then the static came back, but it wasn't ours. I know what dead air sounds like. This wasn't it. This was pressure, like something heavy was sitting on the channel itself. The sound was tight, like it was holding its breath. And then I heard it. A sound underneath the static. Not quite a voice, more like architecture made of sound. A tonal structure that moved. Angular, heavy, but layered with something familiar. Not language exactly, but rhythm, a cadence, a deliberation that felt like speech from far, far away. And then came the word. Only one. It cut through everything all at once, not shouted, not whispered, just placed like a stone on your chest. Judgment, that was it. I sat back from the mic, not out of fear, out of instinct. Like hearing it made me smaller. The static stopped. The lights returned. The system blinked, caught up with itself, and carried on like nothing had happened. But the word was still there, ringing in my head like it had been meant for me. Not for the station, not for the airwaves. For me. I didn't mention it on air, not right away. What was I supposed to say? Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received a message from something. Outside time and place, coffee's still hot. No. I waited. I listened. And an hour later, the signal returned. No fanfare, no warning. Just a pulse, low and even. And then a series of tones. 8, maybe 9, each one deeper than the last. It sounded like the echo of a bell being rung underwater. The air in the booth changed. Thicker. My breath misted, and I knew I wasn't alone, even though no one else had entered the room. Then the message came through. Clear, compressed, delivered in a voice that was somehow flat and infinite at once. This transmission is acknowledged by the Tribunal. Evaluation complete. Contact with species restricted. Per consensus ruling, planetary designation, quarantined. Reason, ecological destabilization, ethical failure, irrecoverable soul fracture. I didn't understand all of it, still don't, but I understood enough. Whatever that was, it wasn't from us. And it had been watching, judging. The transmission ended with one more word, said in a different tone than the rest. A tone that didn't feel like speech at all, but verdict. Sealed. I've replayed the tape a dozen times now, checked the logs, cross-referenced signals. That frequency doesn't exist on any band we can monitor. It came from outside, and what scares me most is how certain it all sounded. Like this wasn't a warning. It was a conclusion, a final breath before the sentence is carried out. I didn't sleep. I sat in this booth until dawn, staring at the waveform of that message as it looped in my head. I even stopped playing music. Just let the signal ride in silence for hours, as if the quiet might give them room to speak again. They did. At 4:13 a.m., right as the horizon started bleeding gray, the signal returned. This time, it wasn't buried, under static. It wasn't coded or compressed. It was broadcast directly, clearly, and I realized too late, intentionally, as if it had been waiting for me to be ready to hear it. This transmission is compliant with Article 7 of Interstellar. Harmonics. Tribunal authority verified. You are hearing this message because you exist within the boundary of a sealed world. Not a warning, a declaration. It went on, slow and structured, like it had been spoken 1,000 times before, to other worlds, other voices. Contact with your planetary domain is now restricted. No further interference or uplift is permitted. Intervention is prohibited. Observation terminated. There was a pause, a long one. Enough time for my hand to hover near the dial, unsure whether to mute or double the volume. Then, do not attempt to leave the containment field. Do not seek external transmission. You are not under punishment. You are under protection from yourselves. I remember breathing too loudly. It felt obscene, like I was doing something defiant just by being alive in the middle of that message. And then something changed. The lights in the booth dimmed. Not a power fluctuation. Something ambient, like the room itself had been noticed. I swear the walls tightened. Not physically, just presence. Like pressure pushing in from every side, like something watching not through cameras or signals but through principle. I asked, out loud, if anyone else was hearing this. Of course, no one answered. The station phone hadn't rung once since the first signal. Not a single call. Not even a wrong number. I went online, checked the forums, the local weather feeds, even the government bans. Everything was still up. Business as usual, people talking about late autumn storms, traffic delays, some flare on the sun. But no one was talking about this. No one was hearing what I was hearing. I'm not arrogant enough to think I'm special. I don't think they chose me. I think I was just on the air when they decided to say what needed to be said, and now I can't turn it off. Every few hours the signal returns. Always the same voice, always the same tone. The earth is closed. They don't say why. Not in terms we'd understand, but the language keeps returning to 3 phrases. Ethical failure, ecological instability, and the third, the one they whisper, soul fracture. I don't know what that means. I've seen a lot of broken things in my life. Families, forests, people trying to crawl their way through a world that chews them up. But soul fracture, that sounds final. Like something you don't repair. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we passed some threshold without knowing it. Maybe they watched long enough to stop believing we'd turn it around. And maybe, just maybe, the signal isn't a punishment. It's a eulogy. One broadcast at the edge of the void, marking a planet that used to be open. Used to be a candidate. Used to be hopeful. Now, just sealed. There was a time when I would have called it coincidence. The satellite glitches, the brief signal dropouts, the odd shift in the weather data. Back then, I'd have blamed it on some routine solar event or aging infrastructure, and maybe even cracked a joke about Mercury being in retrograde. But that was before the tribunal spoke. Before the word sealed started echoing in the back of my thoughts, like it had always been waiting for the right moment to surface. Now I notice things I didn't before, not dramatic things, nothing you'd put in a news report, just little erasures, small vanishings. First, it was the satellite maps. I check them every day as part of the station's weather brief, partly habit, partly to fill dead air. But this morning, the image feed was frozen. Not scrambled, not distorted, just stalled. A perfect image of the Earth's surface, unmoving. Clouds locked in place. No new data. When I refreshed it, the page simply blinked out and was replaced by a static message. Orbital coverage currently restricted. That was it. No reason, no ETA. No contact line, and that was just the start. By noon, the GPS stopped, functioning properly. It didn't break. It wandered. Listeners called in saying their routes home had been rerouted by miles, phones showing phantom roads. Some claimed streets were there that hadn't been before. Others said familiar intersections no longer showed up at all. One man called, his voice trembling, said, "I live in this town. I've lived here 20 years, but my phone says I don't exist." I didn't know what to tell him. I told him to stay calm, stay indoors, wait it out. But even as I said it, I felt how false it was. How little comfort words can offer when the very shape of your world starts slipping sideways. And then, sometime, after sunset, the stars changed. I stepped outside for air, the first time in hours, and looked up, hoping to clear my head. And something about the sky felt rearranged. I couldn't tell you exactly how. The constellations were almost right, but the balance was off. Like a painting you've stared at for years has been replaced with a forgery. Masterful, but soulless. And the longer I looked, the more the unease settled in, because the stars weren't moving. They weren't there. They were being projected. Like something had laid a veil over the firmament, a convincing illusion meant to calm the gaze, but not the soul. We've always thought the night sky was constant, a reminder of our smallness, our place in something larger, but tonight it felt defensive, like it wasn't showing us what's beyond anymore, because what's beyond has turned its back, or worse, is no longer looking. It's happening too slowly for panic. That's the worst part. There are no explosions, no invasions, just absence. One piece at a time. I used to think apocalypse meant fire, thunder, noise, but this feels more like a dimmer switch, a quiet softening of the world's outline. Like we're being phased out, not punished, not attacked, just unplugged from whatever network we thought we were part of. And maybe that's what the tribunal meant. Not that we failed, but that we're no longer being seen, and in a universe built on observation. That's the same as death. I thought silence was the worst of it. Thought that the absence of calls, of satellites, of starlight that actually meant something was the final expression of the tribunal's judgment. I imagined Earth quietly spinning into obscurity, like a sealed vault drifting through space. But that was before the signal changed. It wasn't louder, it wasn't clearer, it was closer. This time, it didn't come through the usual channels, not from the sky. It bled into the signal from inside the system, like a memory that had always been there, just waiting to be heard. It started at 3:09 a.m. I was reading a note from a listener who claimed entire neighborhoods were vanishing from their online maps, and mid-sentence, I heard it, not interrupting, layered beneath. It was my own voice. Not live, not playback, not a recording I recognized. It was something I had never said, but said in my rhythm, my timbre, my breath, and the words it spoke weren't mine. They were observations. Simple at first, mechanical. Unit, human. Function, emotional output. Primary behavior, signal seeking. Then more personal. Unit exhibits loneliness patterns, repeats linguistic loops for companionship. High frequency of nostalgia. Markers. I stopped reading. The waveform was flat. No other feed was active. It was just me, broadcasting. Myself, or something else, wearing my voice like a translator. The message continued. A slow monotone, patient, almost gentle. It spoke about the Earth the way a biologist might describe a dying animal. Native species relies on recursive sound to anchor identity. Broadcast behavior compensates for environmental drift. Expression persists post-judgment. and then subject, not aware it is being translated. That's when I felt it, a pressure behind my eyes. Not pain, not quite, more like the sensation of being understood in a way you didn't give permission for. I cut the mic. I powered down the board, but the voice didn't stop. It continued inside my headset. Calm, inescapable. It wasn't just describing me. It was cataloging me. My voice, my speech patterns, my thoughts reframed in abstract terms. Every emotional inflection reduced to its data form. Every word I chose translated into a log of function, and it wasn't just me. I started hearing it in other broadcasts. Snippets of old calls, playbacks of archived interviews, even commercial jingles, all being slowly reinterpreted, reduced, filed. As if some immense consciousness were sweeping across every signal we'd ever sent, not to delete it, but to understand it on its own terms, to break it down into digestible pieces. One sentence repeated over and over across multiple frequencies. Preservation in process. Language folding complete. Preservation, not rescue, not redemption, just the cold mercy of being stored for later. Like they'd decided not to erase us, only to stop interacting with us. Like we were dangerous to ourselves, but worth remembering. A kind of museum piece. Frozen audio. Not human, just reference. I think that's what the Tribunal is doing now. Not exterminating, not conquering, translating. And once the translation is done, once they've pulled apart every echo of who we were, I think they'll finally be able to turn away, not out of anger, but out of completion, and the world will keep spinning. Quietly archived. You'd think we'd notice it happening. You'd think if someone, something, started removing pieces of the world, we'd feel it. We'd panic, sound alarms, fill the streets. But that's not how it's happening. It's quiet, it's polite. Like someone's cleaning up after a party long after everyone's gone to bed. It started with the skies. Flight logs showed the first gaps, whole flight paths rerouted inland, then canceled altogether. First they blamed weather, then staffing, then silence. I checked the regional tower feed this morning. There are no planes in the air. None. Just blank radar, a whole sky of absence, and no one's asking why. It's like the urge to question is softening. The edges of concern dulled just enough to let the whole thing slide into background noise. Next came the birds, or rather the lack of them. I stepped outside this afternoon, only for a minute, and the quiet was suffocating. No gulls, no sparrows, no crows circling the tower as they always have, like grim little satellites. Nothing. I whistled. No echo came back. Then I looked up and saw the sky again. The clouds aren't moving anymore. Not fast, not slow, just fixed. Hung like scenery behind glass. The wind's still here, but it doesn't touch anything. Leaves don't rustle. Branches don't creak. It's just motion without contact, a mimicry of breeze. And that's when I knew. They're not shutting us down. They're removing us from the interface, like a glitchy app being offloaded, like a website being de-indexed, not deleted, just disconnected. The Tribunal said we were sealed. I think this is what they meant, a slow, soft unraveling of the network we mistook for reality. One by one, systems are slipping away. The broadcast range has shrunk. I used to hit a 60-mile radius from this station. Now it's 20, maybe less. I keep losing listeners, not all at once, just gone. A few calls unanswered, a few voices missing, then silence. I called one regular, Donna from Auburn. She used to phone in every Sunday to read her late husband's poems. I got a dial tone, then nothing. Like the line never existed. Like she never existed. The station logs still have her name, but the entries are corrupt. Dates out of order. A message across the top, node not recognized. Node, like the world, was always a web, and we're just numbered strings in a system they're quietly untangling. One of the last listeners I did reach, a teenager in Manitoba, told me the power had flickered in his town. But it wasn't a blackout. The lights dimmed, then came back. But they came back wrong. A little too bright, too even. Like someone had replaced the grid with something artificial. Like the light's not coming from bulbs anymore, he said. It's coming from the air itself. He asked if he should be scared. I told him the truth. I didn't know, because nothing is breaking. That's the part that terrifies me most. There's no chaos, no destruction, just this eerie perfection descending. A clean, orderly withdrawal of reality, like the universe is being formatted, like we're a program whose time is up. And the Tribunal, they're not here to watch it burn. They're just making sure it ends neatly. I was starting to think the line was dead for good. Days without a real call. Nothing but static, faint distortions, the occasional flicker of breath that might have just been my own. I'd kept the board, open out of habit more than hope. Fingers on the fader like muscle memory was all I had left. Then tonight, just after 3, it rang. One sharp buzz, then silence, like even the phone was surprised to be working. I answered without thinking. WQNR, you're on the air. There was a pause, then a voice, low, hoarse like it had been buried too long and was trying to remember what words were. You're not supposed to be hearing this. Not a question, a warning. I didn't speak. Just let the silence stretch, waiting for him to hang up or glitch out like the others. But he didn't. He took a long breath, then said, "They don't usually miss anyone. You're a margin error, a missed pixel." I asked who he was. He didn't answer. Not directly. "I've been listening for a long time," he said. "Longer than you think. Most of the tribunal sentences don't leave echoes. This one's different." I asked why. "Because you ask the wrong questions," he said. "Because you noticed. Most don't." His voice didn't carry emotion. It just delivered itself. Measured, even, like a transcript read aloud by someone who'd already heard the ending. I asked what was happening. He paused again, then said something I haven't stopped thinking about since. "They're not erasing you. They're making sure no one else connects to what you were. Not destroying, isolating, like a firewall around. A dying node in a network. Not to punish it, but to stop whatever corrupted it from leaking out. Your world cracked open a long time ago," he said. "You just didn't hear it over your own noise. They gave you time. You filled it with distraction." I asked what we did wrong. He laughed. Just once. It was dry. Cracked. "You think it's about right or wrong? This isn't judgment like you understand it. It's ecological, systemic. Your planet tripped a failsafe." He spoke in layers then, not like he had multiple voices, more like his one voice was echoing across channels I couldn't hear fully, couldn't name. The Tribunal doesn't hate you. They don't care enough to. Hate requires investment. This is maintenance. I could barely breathe. "Then why are you telling me this?" I asked. His voice dropped. Not quieter, just deeper, grounded, like gravity behind sound. Because someone always tries to warn the ones still speaking. It doesn't change the outcome, but it's part of the pattern. And then, almost kindly, you're lucky in a way. Most signals don't get an echo. Most voices just end. I asked what he meant. No answer, only static. Then one last phrase, stitched into the white noise like a shadow folding itself shut. "You're almost out of range." The line died. No timestamp, no number, no log on the system. But my recording light was blinking. The board had captured the whole thing. Except when I played it back, it was just me, talking to no one, responding to silence. And for a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined him. But then I saw it, a small change, on the station's master console, tucked in the bottom corner where the date usually sits. A message. Transmission received from unauthorized domain. So now I know there's someone, or something, out there, watching the tribunal work, listening as the world fades. And maybe, just maybe, not everyone agrees with the verdict. There's something worse than being forgotten. It's being remembered incorrectly. Since the voice, the one that warned me I was a missed pixel, I've started watching the signal more than I listened to it. Tracking waveforms, mapping, subtle shifts, looking not for words, but patterns, because I think that's what they care about now. Not meaning, not even memory. Just the shape of what we were. I didn't believe it at first, but now I'm sure we're being archived, not collectively, individually. Everything we've said, sung, written, whispered into dark corners of the internet. It's being lifted, sorted, filed, like a planetary hard drive being duplicated before formatting. And the scariest part? It's happening in real time. Just this morning, the board picked up a repeating loop buried under the emergency frequency, which has been dark for days. It started soft. A single voice, female, old, singing. I recognized the melody. A lullaby. One I haven't heard since I was a child. My mother used to hum it in the kitchen while washing dishes. Voice too quiet to carry, but always there. Always just under the noise, and now, here it was. Clean. High fidelity. Looping, but not a recording. A reconstruction. Perfect. Too perfect. Her voice never used to hold that kind of pitch. And yet, this version had none of the warble, none of the wear. Just the idea of her voice. As if someone, something had scraped the sound from my memory and built it from the raw components. And that's when I knew. They're not just saving what we've made. They're rebuilding it, stripping out flaws, inconsistencies, variants, making it clean. I opened a second channel, one I hadn't used in years, and found a stack of files labeled only by timestamps. Hundreds of them. None created by me. None requested. Inside, segments of broadcasts from this station going back decades. Some from before I worked here. Some from before I was even born. They'd archived us, all of us, and not just the big moments. Not wars or disasters or inventions. They had everything. Phone calls, commercials, laughs between songs. A full recording of a caller telling a joke so bad I cut him off mid-punchline. From 2007. Why? Why save it? Why preserve the fragments of a world you've already judged unfit? Unless. This was never about punishment, unless this is about containment. The tribunal said Earth was sealed, that contact was prohibited, but maybe, just maybe, someone didn't want to lose the data. Maybe we're dangerous, but still, interesting, a failed experiment. But one worth documenting. And what if they're not the only ones watching? What if the signal I got, the unauthorized voice, was part of something else? A rogue process, an archivist of a different kind, one that remembers not to preserve, but to warn. I keep watching the station's diagnostic board. The data flow has changed. It's no longer outbound only. There's a mirror stream now, returning from somewhere else, as if my voice is being played back by something distant, then slightly altered and sent back to me. And tonight, for the first time, I heard my own words repeated by someone else. Same phrasing, same rhythm, but different tone, like someone imitating me from another room. I asked the mic a simple question. Who are you preserving this for? And the answer came 3 minutes later, not through the feed, but through the backup printer. Long dead, which sputtered, back to life for a single page. 4 words, all caps, for when it's safe. I don't know what that means. I don't know who decides when that is. But now I understand something I didn't before. We're not being erased. We're being remembered. Not by name. Not by history. By pattern. And once they have what they need, they won't look back, because the version of us they're keeping isn't really us at all. I thought maybe it was just me at first. The dreams. They weren't terrifying, exactly. No monsters, no chase, just weight, space that felt too wide, eyes I couldn't see but knew were fixed on me, watching not what I was doing, but what I believed. For days I chalked it up to stress, to lack of sleep, to being the last voice on a channel no one's supposed to hear anymore. But then the emails started. Scattered at first. Half-formed thoughts sent at odd hours. Subject lines like, "Just a feeling," or, "Do you remember it too?" I opened a few out of habit, then more, dozens more. And they all said the same thing. They were dreaming of a room. Not a room like any we've built. Not square, not lit by any sun. Just a vast circular chamber. Endless but enclosed. Filled with beings they couldn't describe. Not monsters, not humanoid. Just presence. They stood on tiers, silent, towering, faceless. Not looking at the dreamer. Looking through them. And in the center of the room, always, was Earth. Suspended, not turning. Just held, like evidence. Some described voices. A chorus, dispassionate, listing things in languages they didn't speak but somehow understood. Unrestrained consumption, recursive violence, pattern deviation, regression of empathy. I started marking the messages on a map, pinning them across time zones, languages, cultures, and it didn't matter where the dream came from. The details were always the same. Even. The angle of the light falling across the floor of the chamber was identical, like they'd all been inside the same memory, the same trial. One caller, the only one who dared use their real voice on the air, said they felt like they weren't asleep in the dream. They were being logged. Every thought, every feeling, every defense they tried to make in their own mind, it wasn't theirs. It was being heard. They told me, I tried to justify us. I really did. I kept thinking about kindness, about rescue, about art. But every time I thought of something beautiful, something forgivable, I could feel them turn away, like it was too little, too late. And the worst part? They weren't angry. The beings in the chamber, the tribunal, if that's what they were, had no rage in them. No sorrow, just certainty. As if they'd seen 1,000 species before ours fall in the same direction, and they'd stopped trying to interfere. They were accountants of failure, and we were just one more column in a long ledger. I asked the caller if they remembered anything else. They hesitated, then said, there was one thing. Right before I woke up, I heard a voice behind me. Not theirs, a smaller one. It said, they'll keep the memory, but not the heart. I asked what that meant. They didn't answer. The line stayed open for a long time, but I never heard them breathe again. Since then, I've been waking from dreams I don't remember, but I always have that same sensation. Like I've been assessed, like I've spoken at length in a courtroom with no sound, and I wonder if the reason I'm still here, still broadcasting, is because I haven't been closed. Not yet. Maybe some of us are still under review. Maybe the verdict isn't entirely finished, or maybe they've just decided I'm the last thing they need to hear before the file gets stored. Either way, the dreams are getting closer. The silence in them is louder than anything I've ever broadcast. And when I close my eyes now, I feel the floor of that chamber beneath my feet. And I keep waiting for the voice to ask the one question I still don't know how to answer. What were you trying to become? I used to have this habit of checking the listener map every hour on the hour. a little glowing constellation of dots, each one flickering in from somewhere across the region, sometimes farther, a heartbeat of connection. Proof that the voice carried. Now, there's just one dot. Mine. I've recalibrated the system 5 times, thinking maybe it was a bug, a line error, a false zero. But no, the map is accurate. The signal is still live. But it's not being received, or if it is, it's no longer being acknowledged. It's not that people have stopped listening, it's that the world has stopped needing ears. This morning, the Western Relay Tower went dark. Not broken, just inactive. A perfect shutdown. No damage, no warning, no noise. Like a light going out at the end of a corridor you didn't know you were walking down. Then, the backup repeater. 2 towns over, then the weather station. 1. By one, these pieces of the network, the ones I've relied on for years, are going silent. Not erased. Just unlinked. At first, I thought maybe the Tribunal was collapsing the systems, that this was their final sweep. Not a deletion, but a severing. But now I'm starting to believe something worse, that it isn't them pulling away. It's the signal itself, like it knows the trial is over, like it's folding itself inward, withdrawing into its source. Me. The signal is becoming personal, targeted, and I don't know what that makes me. A witness, a file, a voice sample? Sometimes I wonder if I've already been archived and what I'm doing now is just playback. Some final entry they're letting play out before they mark the timestamp and file the entry under. Unresolved. Low threat. I still speak, even though no one's left to speak to. I still say the weather, though the clouds don't move anymore. I still tell stories between tracks, even though the board hasn't lit up in days. Not because I think someone's listening, but because I need to know the difference between still being alive and being remembered as if I were. Last night I tried to leave the station, not far, just out past the trees, up the ridge that overlooks the lake bed. The road was there. And then it wasn't. The pavement just faded. Not crumbled, not overgrown. Gone. Like the world was receding behind me as I walked, like the rendering had stopped loading. I turned back, and the station was still there, glowing softly in the blue dark, unchanged, untouched, like a page left dog-eared in, a book no one's reading anymore. That's what this place feels like now. Not abandoned, just forgotten gently, like a childhood toy placed back on the shelf and never picked up again. And still the signal shrinks. Still the voice carries, not to others, but into itself. It's like shouting down a hallway that curves back to your own mouth. I wonder if this is what the Tribunal meant by containment. Not a cage, not a wall, just an echo chamber, where all the things we use to shout to the universe bounce around until they no longer sound like language, just pattern, just noise. Eventually, even the map will go blank. Even the dot marked me will fade. And when that happens, maybe the signal will keep going. Maybe it won't need a transmitter at all. Just the idea of one. Just the memory of a voice that once tried to be heard in the moment before the world went quiet. I can't tell if the world is moving, or if I'm just drifting in place. At first, it was easy to blame exhaustion. The days have started blending together. No schedule, no signal, no pulse from outside the station. Just the slow hum of systems I'm no longer sure are even hooked up to anything real. But lately, things feel off, not emotionally, physically. The angle of light through the window is wrong. Sunrise used to strike the edge of the broadcast tower at a sharp slant, like a blade of gold. Now it's higher, rounder, like the sky's been lifted, stretched, slightly off axis. I noticed it 2 days ago, or what I think was 2 days. The clock on the console ticks normally, but sometimes I glance up and find an hour's passed in what felt like 20 minutes. Or no time at all. It's like the tempo of reality is being rewritten in pieces, one beat at a time. Time isn't breaking. It's sliding. I dropped a pen on the floor and it didn't roll the way it should have. It curved, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if gravity had turned its head to look at something else. Then came the sound. The absence of it. Last night I knocked over a cup, ceramic, thick, the kind that always shatters. But this time, it hit the ground with a soft, hollow thud. No echo, no ring, just dull contact as if the floor beneath me wasn't quite convinced it should act like a floor anymore. And the air. It's thinner, not cold, not dry, just less. Like the planet's atmosphere is stretching itself, preparing for what? I don't know. But I feel it in my bones. The quiet suspicion that this place, this Earth, isn't anchored where it used to be. I tried checking the stars again, but they don't align with any chart I own. Orion's belt is gone, replaced by 3 dots that shimmer too steadily, too deliberately. One of them blinks when I speak aloud. No rhythm, no code, just a slow, soft flash that matches the pause between my sentences. And then there's the feedback. It started a few hours ago, a low tone, barely audible, not interference, not mechanical, more like resonance, as if the ground beneath me is reacting to the sound of my own voice, as if my broadcast is echoing in a space much larger than this booth. Not the airwaves, not the internet. Something else. Some place beyond, and I'm starting to wonder if the Tribunal didn't just seal us away. I think they moved us, shifted our coordinates, placed us somewhere quieter, somewhere further, somewhere less likely to be stumbled across. I say us, but I don't know who else is left. Maybe it's just me now. Maybe the reason the signals stopped isn't because they were shut down. Maybe they were left behind, and I was taken with the shell. This world isn't spinning the way it used to. I walked out to the field this morning. The grass isn't grass anymore. Not really. It bends too easily, reforms when I step away, like memory foam made of something. Organic. The birds never came back, and the clouds haven't moved in days. The whole place feels boxed in, like a display, a recreation of Earth for something else to look at, to study, to remember. And the station. It still hums, still broadcasts, but I don't think it's reaching out anymore. I think it's looping inward, like a lighthouse, in a harbor that no longer connects to the sea. There's no horizon out there, just fog. Not mist, not weather, just blankness. I walked into it once. It felt warm, welcoming, like stepping into a memory of light, and for a second, just one small, aching second, I felt peace. Like the voice that once warned me was whispering again, this time, not in fear, but in recognition, telling me I'd arrived, not somewhere new, but somewhere already prepared. And now I don't know whether to keep broadcasting, or finally listen to the silence that's been designed just for me. It happened while I was asleep, if sleep is even the right word anymore. These days it's more like being paused, a flicker between scenes. I blink, and time has moved, but I haven't. The dreams have stopped. There's no chamber now, no eyes, just quiet. When I woke, every screen in the station was already lit. No alerts, no messages, just the symbol, the one I'd seen in fragments during previous signals. 3 interlocking arcs surrounding a black dot. I used to think it was a logo, a seal, something official. Now I know what it really is, a stamp, the Tribunal's way of marking something closed. I didn't touch the console, Didn't need to. At exactly 03:33 a.m., the air shifted. No hum, no static, just an opening, like the world had taken a breath after holding it for far too long, and the voice returned. Not the strange interpreter I'd heard before, not the echo of myself. This was different, cold, complete. The kind of voice that didn't speak unless everything it needed to say could be said once and never repeated. It filled the room, not through the speakers but from the walls. Final. Review complete. That was the first line. I sat completely still. Planetary domain has reached termination of observational value. Behavioral anomalies confirmed. Potential neutralized. Each phrase landed like a gavel strike. There was no emotion, no malice, just declaration. This domain is sealed. Further interaction is prohibited. Signal collapse initiated. And then it said something that made the temperature drop. Not just around me, but inside me. Let silence be its final orbit. I didn't understand what that meant. Not then, but I do now. Because right after that, the sky went out. Not dark. Out. The stars blinked, not faded, not dimmed, just ceased, as if someone had shut off the ceiling of the universe, and in their place, nothing. No moon, no clouds, just a blank shell of above. It didn't feel like night. It felt like being wrapped, contained, made presentable, like we were being filed in a drawer too far back for anyone to find again. The station lights flickered, but stayed on. The board glowed, steady as ever. I reached for the mic, but it was already live. And for the first time, I didn't speak. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized it wouldn't matter anymore. The signal wasn't going anywhere. There were no ears left to hear it. This wasn't a broadcast now. It was a signature. A final note in a document that had already been archived. I sat there a long time, waiting for the silence to do something, to fill with meaning. But silence isn't meant to say anything. It's meant to remain, to last. And when the voice stopped, nothing replaced it. No reply. No denouement. Just the steady hum of a world that had been told, with unfathomable patience and precision, that it was now, finally, over, and all that was left was to stay still, to be remembered in format only, not in spirit, not in hope, just data. Closed, filed, and final. It's quiet now, not dead quiet, not the silence you get in a room with the power out. This is something deeper, something woven into the walls of the air itself. A silence with intent, with direction. For the last 3 hours, I haven't moved from this chair. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm not sure there's anything to move through anymore. I stepped outside once, just past the booth door, barefoot in the gravel. There was no wind, no insects, no moon above me. Only the tower light blinking behind me like a metronome in a sealed memory. The ground felt hollow. Not brittle, hollow, like it belonged to something else now. Or worse, to nothing. There was a faint curve on the horizon where the land should have stretched, a soft arc like a snow globe ending at the edge of its glass. And beyond it, just blur. Not darkness, not distance, just beyond. And I think that's the answer. We're not inside anything anymore. We're outside. I came back into the booth, and the mic was already live. No green light, no levels. But it hummed. Not with electricity, with presence. As if the room still knew what it meant to speak, even if it no longer had an audience. So I did what I always do. I leaned in. I spoke softly. I said, if anyone is still listening, I don't know where. We are. Then I said, I don't think we're anywhere. I let the sentence hang in the air, and the air didn't move. No echo. No reply. Just that hum. Low, comforting, almost tender, as if some part of the signal still cared about the habit of words. And then it changed. The waveform on the board shimmered, and for a moment I heard my own voice played back, but not as an echo, not even as mimicry, as reflection, a version of me, not from the past, not from this moment, but from after. And it said, my voice said, "You are now outside." That was all. The transmission cut. No static, no warning. Just gone. I sat with that for a long time, rolling the words around like a stone in my mouth, not exiled, not imprisoned, just placed beyond the frame. Like an object you don't destroy, but don't want to see anymore. Earth isn't missing. It's shelved, and the rest of the universe has already moved on. No conflict, no remorse, just a quiet forgetting, and what's left. A voice, a station, a broadcast signal stuck in recursive loop, not because it expects reply, but because it remembers what it meant to speak. If you're hearing this, if somehow the tribunal missed a frequency, or someone is tuning in from outside their reach, know this. We were here. We made music. We argued and danced and prayed and broke things we didn't understand. We told stories into the dark because we thought someone might be out there listening. Maybe that's all a world ever is, a story someone cared about once. Now sealed, now filed, now floating. This is WQNR, or whatever's left of it, signing off, not with a goodbye, just a pause, just a breath, before the silence continues.